Hey guys, here is the tutorial for my interview makeup using the Urban Decay Naked 2 palette. For my foundation, I'm going to be mixing the L'Oreal Paris Infallible Pro Glow and the Infallible Total Coverage. I'll be using the Milani Prime Perfection for my primer. I start with the total coverage and I put it on this little compact that I use to mix my foundation, and then I add the Pro Glow on top of it. I like to mix them just because it gives you a dewy but it's got full coverage at the same time. And then you just mix it up and it comes to a nice creamy consistency. I'll be using my Real Techniques foundation brush just to blend it all in. Make sure you go down to the neck so it's seamless. Now that my foundation is on, I'm going to use the Tarte setting powder just to set it all in, and it gives a more mattifying look. I don't use concealer, but some people do, and they use this to set it as well. I use a dry beauty blender to apply my setting powder. I feel that it cuts down on the flashback, and it's easier to sweep off with your brush later. Now that my setting powder is on, I'm going to use a fluffy brush. This is a blush brush from Pixi. I just use the fluffy brush to remove any of the excess setting powder on my face. Now that I've dusted off all the excess setting powder, I'm going to use my Wet n Wild contour palette. You don't have to contour necessarily, but I like to add in a little bit of bronzer to the hollows of my cheeks just to give my face a little bit more of dimension since I have chubby cheeks. Now that my face is done, we will move on to brows, and I use a Sephora brow pencil. So the label on my eyeshadow primer has worn off since I've had it for a while. This is the Hard Candy Eyeshadow Primer. Just apply it all over the lid up to the brow bone. Now that my eyes are primed and ready to go, I'm going to grab my Urban Decay Naked 2 palette and start with my eyeshadow. I'm going to be using a fluffy blending brush and the color Booty Call for my eyebrow highlight. Moving on to the next shade, I'll be using a fluffy crease brush and the shade Tease. I'll be applying that into the crease of my eye. Start out small and then you can build up the color as you go. Now I'll be using a flat shader brush with some setting spray. The setting spray helps pull out some of the shimmer shine in this shade from the palette. And then I will be using the shade Verve and applying that to the inner corners of my eye, about halfway to the middle of my eye. Using my crease brush again, I'll be using the shade Pistol for the outer corners of my eye. I will pull it into the crease just a little bit just to give it some of that depth and dimension and make it blend. Using a different fluffy crease brush, I'm going to be using the shade Blackout and adding a little bit more dimension to the outer corners of my eye. With this shade, be very, very careful. A little bit goes a long way. It is very pigmented. Using a small angled brush, I'll be using this for my bottom lash line. I'll be using the shade Verve, again using my setting spray just to pick up that metallic shade a little bit more. Using the small angled brush again, I'll be going into Blackout for the outer half of my lower lash line, just to pull it into the look and so the top and the bottom match. For my eyeliner, I'll be using the eyeliner from J. Manuel in the shade Wicked. I'll apply this to my bottom waterline and the upper waterline as well. Now for mascara, I'll be using the Too Faced Better Than Sex mascara. This is my absolute favorite mascara. Now to go back in and actually finish my face, because I forgot earlier, we'll be using a MAC blush. The labels come off, so I'm not sure of the shade, but it's a light pink. And it doesn't bring out too much red in my face, but it's nice and subtle. Now moving on to my highlight, I'll be using the Maybelline Master Chrome highlighter palette in the shade Rose Gold. I'll be using my fan brush to apply this. I'll be applying it to the upper parts of my cheekbones, the bridge of the nose, and then the bow of my lips as well.